Welcome to Make America Healthy. My name is Beth Shaw. I'm the founder of YogaFit Training Systems, the world's largest yoga school, the author of 4 books on health and wellness, all with the word yoga in the title, and the host of this pod. Our goal at Make America Healthy is to educate you, empower you, and inspire you to take better control and care of your own physical and mental health. Today's topic is heart-brain coherence. And we're joined by 2 special guests who will be telling us what that is in case you don't know. So first, we'd like to welcome Andrea Trank. She is a registered yoga teacher, somatic yoga teacher, restorative yoga, and she also coaches with HeartMath, memory maintenance, and a bunch of other modalities. She is a big believer in yoga, as we all are, and she also works with clients who have chronic diseases and issues. We'd also like to welcome Christy Manuel, who is the head of YogaFit's Yoga Therapy Program. She's based in Naples, Florida, and she has been teaching for over 35 years in the fitness industry and yoga space. She does a lot of great trainings for YogaFit and leads trainings around the world. She also has a master's degree in health and fitness management. So welcome to you both. I guess we're spending a lot of time talking about the heart today, talking about the heart center, and really understanding what heart coherence is and why we need to know what it is and what we can do to get it. So who'd like to open us up?
I'd be glad to. I didn't know much about heart-brain coherence 7 years ago, and I happened upon it by accident. I was actually in a yoga training and somebody asked if you wanted your energy read. So I said, sure, read my energy. And she looks at me and she says, heart. And she steps back and I'm like, what do you mean heart? And I was like, what does this all mean? And she goes, I don't know. Somehow I think you need to be involved in something related to the heart. Now, what was interesting is I was focusing on brain health then because my mother was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I had been focusing on memory maintenance yoga and all the yoga styles about brain. And the next day I'm sitting at my computer and I see this weird ad scroll by on Facebook, 50% off on HeartMath training. So I figured this must be a sign. I signed up for it and I never stopped since. So what is HeartMath and what is heart-brain coherence? All about actually connecting your heart with your brain. Believe it or not, they do connect, and it's mostly communication from the heart to the brain. And it's known as physiological coherence when you get your heart, brain, and emotions all synced up. And then all sorts of other systems, your body starts syncing up. And so that's the quick summary of what it is, but we can go so far in depth. And I'd love to hear Christy's take on this as well.
It's really interesting. We have been teaching HeartMath techniques for greater heart coherence, heart-brain coherence. And since I want to say 2015, I was at a medical yoga conference in Washington, D.C. And one of the breakout sessions was on this tool that they were using at, I think it was George Washington University in the medical school. And they had hooked patients up to this thing called Inner Balance by HeartMath. And what they were finding was they would have the Reiki practitioners do their thing with the patients, and the doctors could see right away from this inner balance. They were hooked up, they were wired for this. They could see right away that their body was responding. As it turned out, these patients that were having this treatment and monitoring, they healed faster. They had shorter hospital stays, and so they allowed the Reiki practitioners to continue their work. They kept monitoring. I brought this into one of our trainings called Restoring Balance, looking at the parasympathetic nervous system and what are the effects of our poses and our different practices on our coherence. And so it's been a great tool for us. Over the years, I've really come to see how this is the foundation of what we call yoga therapy, working with people one-on-one and trying to raise optimal wellness. We can access that coherence through simple techniques like our breath with the knowledge of the heart-brain coherence. And I want to say it weaves through most of our trainings. We use those techniques.
Well,
So
that's
I have a
fabulous.
question for both of you. We have a lot of listeners at Make America Healthy, and they may be listening and going, how do I know if my heart and brain are out of alignment? If I don't have access to diagnostics, are there some symptoms and signs that we could look for to do self-diagnosis?
Absolutely. In fact, I don't use the inner balance on me, partly because I'm competitive. And I would be more focused on me getting into a coherent state through the device than actually focusing on the things I'm supposed to focus on, which is breath. And what HeartMath does is they add the emotional component. So they say there's only so much we can accomplish with breath because we can't maintain the breath all day long in this nice, lovely fashion. But if we can start with changing our breath, and then after that, add a uplifting or what they call renewing emotion. They're one of the few groups that have actually looked at how your emotional state affects your heart rate variability. And I can explain heart rate variability after Christy jumps in, but basically, I can tell you start to figure out based on your nervous system, just based on, just like in yoga, how we feel inside if we are getting into a coherent state. It's very different than a meditative state. It's much more street level. You can do it with your eyes open. You do it in the car. I do it all day long, pretty much.
Just to jump in for a minute, regarding heart rate variability, I had gone to my functional medicine doctor a few weeks ago. And before I walked in, I received a rather disturbing email. When I went in and they took my blood pressure, they're like, were you just working out? I said, no, I got an email that I didn't like because my heart rate, which is normally fairly low, was extremely elevated. So if you're listening to this podcast, just know that anything that we perceive as a stressor can jack that heart rate right.
And heart rate is not exactly the same as the variability. And I do want to let you know that because the variability is how smoothly we can shift from a high heart rate to a low heart rate, depending on what our body needs. For instance, when we get a stressful message, yes, our heart rate's going to go up, but we would like for it to be very smoothly coming down within a certain time period. And the more wavy and the more smooth that picture is of your HRV, it is an indication of better health. We'd like to be like our pets. My dog will start rah, 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 and 2 seconds later be sound asleep. Wouldn't it be lovely if we could do that in our day? And a lot of us can't do that smoothly.
I think I'll add this, that our yoga practices are giving us that continuity. And there's a saying, what fires together, wires together. So we're creating these really strong connections with our breath practices, with being aware of our emotional states, and we can shift that. And with heart rate variability, every time we inhale, our heart rate goes up. And it's not conscious. We don't feel that each time, but every time we exhale, it goes down. And so we have these between the heart rates, and the higher those variations are means that your system is really healthy in responding to various cues from the environment, from your emotional state. And so say if there was a fire alarm to go off right now, our heart rates would go up and we'd be looking around, where's the danger? And then when we realized, oh, it's a false alarm, the alarm turns off. If we have a high heart rate variability and a resilient system, our heart rate's going to come back down calmly. If somebody that has, for example, PTSD, it might stay up for perceivably days, or it could be just hours. So they correlate high HRVs with, or excuse me, low HRVs, which would mean a low resiliency system, not very responsive system, with higher all-cause mortality, so higher causes of death and across the board. It's so fascinating.
There are a lot of I wear an Aura ring. There's a lot of wearable devices that you can measure your HRV. Let's talk also about ways that we can improve our HRV.
The HeartMath system likes to focus on the emotional component. And I think in terms of the wearables, they're the only system that actually somehow, and I don't know what they did differently in their biofeedback device, but their biofeedback device can measure your emotional state. They actually have fascinating 30 years of research where if it looks like a jaggedy line one way, it might be anxiety, and a different kind of jaggedy line might mean depressed. They have studied this, and they have studied how just shifting from what they call a depleting state to a renewing state can change your heart rate variability and improve it. The practice, it's interesting. They say you really need to practice any one of these things daily and do it at a minimum of 6 weeks to actually start improving your HRV. And again, being a competitive person who's older with health issues, I cannot compete with a younger person who has no health issues. My HRV is never going to be as good as a younger person without health issues. However, it's comparing against, like it's training for my own health to be the healthiest I can. And the yoga practice is so lovely for that. All these breathing and emotional components can be incorporated just seamlessly into a daily yoga practice. But for people who don't want to do yoga, you can spend 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes midday, minutes right at dinner time, and 5 minutes at night, 20 minutes a day of doing certain practices. You can actually shift your baseline and improve your HRV in as short as 6 weeks.
That's good news for all of us. I'd love for you both, and Christy, we'll start with you, to share some success stories. I know you both work privately with clients, and Christy, I know you do a lot of trainings for YogaFit with thousands of people around the world. Tell us some success stories that you've seen.
Oh gosh, there's so many. Specifically with our trainings, we have a very strong Yoga Fit for Warriors program, and it is a program that we focus on PTSD. We learn the polyvagal theory and how that applies and how the nervous system works. And we have seen so many people heal or just move down that healing pathway towards peace, people that suffer from PTSD. One example, and this is just what happens over time. So there was a gentleman going through levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I happened to be his trainer for all of those levels. And he had PTSD and had a hard time sleeping. In level 1, he fell asleep and he snored and it was quite loud. I'd go over and just let him know that, just wake him up a little bit, and you have to be careful with someone with PTSD when you do that. He came back a few months later for level 2, and he was still snoring, but it wasn't quite as loud. It wasn't quite as vigorous. By the time he got to level 4, he was sleeping soundly in Shavasana. That's actually a true compliment to the yoga teacher, because if a person with PTSD feels safe enough to fall asleep, it means their nervous system has relaxed. It means they're no longer surveying for survival, and they can truly relax and fall asleep. That's a good thing. And so just observing him over several months with the not snoring anymore, he was sleeping more soundly. So to me, that was a huge success marker. So being able to sleep soundly, feel rested, and then you can actually connect to those positive emotions, right? I'll say one thing too. You're talking about emotions, Andrea, and we teach this a lot, is how do we connect to joy? And we talk about layers in yoga. The koshas are one of the things that I ask clients first is, what brings you joy? And sometimes I get answers like, what do you mean? I'm not sure. And I know that's where I'm going to start, because it's that emotion of joy, of gratitude, appreciation that can move us into coherence so much more quickly. And we know that from that research from HeartMath.
Thank you, Christy. That's a great story.
I primarily teach HeartMath to pre-service teachers. I've been at the college level, and I'm so glad they have incorporated programs like I offer, because we're losing teachers within the first 3 years of them going into the field. And for a while, I was trying to focus on the teachers already in the classroom. And I realized we've got to catch them early. We've got to catch them before they get in the classroom so they start to incorporate these tools in their own life. And then they can use it also for classroom management, which is lovely. When they see that things that they can do for their own emotional regulation will actually change the behaviors of the students because they feel safe. And a safer student is going to be a well-behaved student who's going to perform better in the classroom. So we've actually been keeping stats. We've done pre and post tests. There is a professor. I was adjunct. I was not a full-time professor, but I worked with a full-time professor who still wants us to publish an article on this, and we haven't done that yet. But our hope is that the teachers stay in the field longer, that they feel less stress because there's so many things they can't control. And all we hear about is how exhausted they are, how stressed they are, how they have no control. The pay is so bad. And we can't affect the pay, but we can surely affect the way they feel about what they're doing, teaching them just to savor those moments when the children are just smiling at them and feeling good, and that the kids do well on their tests. And mostly their emotional state is based on their student state, unfortunately. We have to try to help them see that this will not only help you stay in the field and stay well, but it will help your students. Therefore, the biggest factor in your emotional state will also improve. And so we teach some very practical tools. That's been my biggest example. I do use it in my yoga classes all the time. They love it all. But to have school teachers say that this is helping them in their classroom has really been very rewarding for me.
That's awesome. Teachers can use as much support as they can get these days. Let's talk a little bit about receptors in the heart versus receptors in the brain, and heart energy versus brain energy. Perhaps you want to tap into the gut a little. Either one of you can take this.
Why don't I start with a little bit of a primer on the nervous system, and maybe that'll help people frame this. We have our central nervous system, which is our brain and our spinal cord, and then something we call our peripheral nervous system, which is our fight or flight system, which you probably have heard of. It helps us prepare to run away from a threat or stay and fight, or there's a third, submit. And then we have a somatic nervous system, which is our voluntary movement. So mainly what we're talking about today is the functions of the autonomic nervous system. And the more scientific or medical terms, I shouldn't say medical, but the anatomy terms are the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. That sympathetic is that fight or flight. The parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest. You may have heard those terms applied to this. So it's really where we heal, where we have digestion functions happening. It's active at rest. When we look at our nervous system balance, that's what we're talking about when we talk about resiliency and pretty much healing people especially people that have had chronic stress or trauma. People tend to be in our society overbalanced toward the sympathetic nervous system, where everything is giving us stress. Going back to that, what we do most often, what fires together, wires together, we can become wired for survivor or surviving and for chronic stress. And then we tend to look for those situations. So with our yoga practices is it can help us to balance. And when we talk about what are we balancing, we're talking about the primary nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system, which you, again, probably have heard about these days, the vagus nerve. And vagus stands for wandering. And it's the 10th cranial nerve, and it comes down both sides. It innervates with the facial complex nerves. It innervates the larynx, the lungs, the heart, and then all the way down, lots of innervation in the intestines. And the primary function of this is to send information from the body to the brain so the brain can make decisions. And then one really important aspect of one of the branches, the most recent evolution of is what we call ventral vagal. It's the part of the vagus nerve that connects with our heart. And I always like to say our heart enters the room before we do. And Andrea, you were talking about this with the teachers, is that our physiological state it announces itself first. And if we're in a stressed out situation or just in that state all the time, people are going to feel that. And they might not know exactly what they're feeling, but they're not going to be as comfortable. And so when people come into this coherent state, others tend to relax around them. That's what we're balancing and training, is we're trying to get the system used to hanging out in that parasympathetic or that ventral vagal. So when we connect with our heart center, with heartfelt feelings, then we are connecting with others, because our heart energy reaches out about 50,000 times stronger than our brain energy. And a lot of times we think our brain is running the show, but really our heart is running the show. We get information through the heart, it goes up to the brain, and then it goes down to the gut, according to studies from the HeartMath. So it's a really interesting pathway. So we can do these practices like connecting with gratitude. That's one of the strongest, quickest ways to get into coherence, is to connect with, or think of something that makes you feel grateful, that helps you feel grateful, that helps you connect with that sense of appreciation and loving kindness. And then our heart brain come into coherence. We start connecting with the field. And what we talk about in one of the trainings one of my favorite trainings is expanding consciousness. And I hope I'm not being too out there. It's where we talk about what is the field and what is, dare I say, God, or the universe, or whatever it is that your spiritual guidance is out in this field. When we come into coherence, we connect outwards. And that's the only way to connect. You speak about energy, that's how it really becomes the basis for connecting with others and helping others down that journey of healing.
Let's talk about yoga a little bit. Do you think that, I'm going to just say a standard yoga fit practice, because that's what we do, will bring people into this coherent state if one were to just practice yoga every day?
Yes. And I'm going to say specifically yoga fit for, and not to diss any other style of yoga, but one of the special things that we have going for us, and we've done this since you started this, Beth, 26 years ago, long time. Yeah, we have something called the YogaFit Essence. This is asking our students to check in, breathing and feeling their body, and letting go of judgments, letting go of expectations, letting go of competition. And that's one of the really important ways to hand empowerment or control of the student, of the class. We want them to listen to their own bodies and then make those decisions. The language that we have is transformational language, and safety is a huge part of resiliency and being able to come into coherence. Because if someone doesn't feel safe, it means they're going to be on alert. For those reasons, and then a few more, I really think that YogaFit is the practice that does bring people into coherence and heals people, like other practices of yoga as well, heals people that don't even know they need to be healed or are being healed. I always say, for me, yoga saved my life, and it did. So
it continues to save my life every day.
Yeah. May I go a little bit more into the science, because I'm a little bit of a geek. I was a science teacher before I discovered HeartMath and yoga. So I'm a teacher by training. You asked about the heart neurons versus the brain neurons and a few things like that. And I just want to go back to that. They have discovered that there are about 40,000 neurons in the heart. There are probably 1 billion in the brain. I don't know how many, but there's so many more. Going on off what Christy said, that the studies have been just fascinating on how the heart is the first place where we sense something if we have an emotional connection to it. And so the way they tested it is they put these visuals up on a computer, and they put scary visuals and really happy, sweet visuals. Then they hooked up a monitor to the heart, to the brain, and to the skin. And there was a black space, like just a blank screen between each visual. So what they found was the heart perceived intuitively what was coming up, whether it was going to be scary or whether it was going to be happy. Then it went to the brain. The skin was the last, which is everything else, which means the gut would have been the last two, gut, skin, and those kind of things. They continued these studies, and they started also figuring out in terms of the amount of detection of the heart's energy versus what's coming out of the brain. You could read through instrumentation, like maybe less than a quarter of an inch from your head. The heart, at least the instruments they have now, go out to about 3 feet outside of you. So you could draw a big circle of 3 feet, which is why it's so great for a teacher. If a teacher gets into coherence or gets a kid into coherence, somebody 3 feet away can also become coherent, and also within our yoga classes. But the other thing about the heart's intuition is they also figured out that, like Christy was mentioning, we are connected. And in fact, in HeartMath, we do something really crazy. They have the Global Coherence app, and people use it all over the world. And they're actually reading the magnetics of the earth. They have these instruments all over the earth, and they're gathering data as people are doing certain practices at the same time. And they're collecting the data at these various places around the world, which is showing not only that we can connect with each other, but we're connected with the earth too. And there's a resonant energy of the earth that if we breathe at that same resonant pace, we're more connected with our planet. It's out there, but it's unbelievable.
It makes sense to me. And hopefully all of the holistic practices that are being done these days and the spread of yoga and other mind-body disciplines will only help to raise the vibration on the earth in general. For people listening who are curious about implementing some of these strategies, what would their next steps be, Christy?
I think it probably, if they're really, really interested, I would suggest starting a yoga training, like just beginning, like, for example, Yoga Fit level 1, because we start to talk about these ideas. The real magic is doing, right? And having the experience. And I think people come back to your classes because they have felt that connectedness. They felt good, and they don't necessarily know why. I really think that's one of the real gifts of doing a teacher training and not just going to a practice, is then you really learn and you begin to be able to pass it on to others. So that grassroots, let's spread it by doing.
Yeah, I think that studies have shown that people learn best actually by teaching. So by taking a teacher training, you're going to learn to teach yourself, maybe your family members. And a lot of people actually end up at YogaFit. They don't plan on becoming instructors, and then they find their way to becoming amazing instructors, and their lives really change and transform as a result. We've got a conference coming up in Orlando early September through yogafit.com. Christy, will there be several of these medically based trainings happening there?
They are. I just actually happen to have the list with me right here. I was just looking at it. There's specifically like the sound and mantra training talks about the idea of coherence and vibration and energy. It goes in depth into that. We also have a 4-day, if someone's already a teacher, we have a 4-day we call Yoga Fit Healthcare 2, and it is an exploration of the subtle body. And so it brings in all of these concepts and how we use the energy, what is the energy, looking at the science of the energy. That is fascinating. I'm actually teaching one called Yoga for Chronic Pain, and that is using these techniques. Yeah, because pain can be, it's related to the nervous system. If we are stressed in that low HRV, we're going to experience more pain, and they've shown that through research. And this whole idea of the polyvagal theory and what's happening with the nervous system is intricately involved with helping people with persistent pain be able to release that and have a higher quality life. Even though they might not lose the condition, they'll be able to experience less pain through some of these techniques. So
it sounds contraindicative. I've seen it. I've taught thousands of people all over the world. I've seen a lot of people who have pain. Sometimes they just need to do some gentle movement. A lot of times people think they need to be immobilized, when actually what they need to do is maybe even a gentle yoga practice to get the energy flowing and get the endorphins going, the serotonin levels. Yoga is the only thing that makes the brain produce GABA naturally, so you don't have to take a pill. It's really transformational. We just opened up our first brick and mortar studio in a long time in Fort Lauderdale, the Be Yoga Fit studio, where I'm broadcasting live from today. I've been teaching now mostly every day, just for over 2 weeks, and the difference in my mood and actually even in my body, more than just doing a quick 20-minute practice here and there, it is amazing. It's showing up on in-body results as more muscle mass and weight loss, which wasn't my goal, but I'm very happy. I'll take it. It's nice to see students who keep coming back who are just feeling better, not so tight, because being tight means you need to move and get some heat and get some space. Andrea, tell our listeners where they can find you.
First of all, I do a free HeartMath group meditation once a month called We at Heart. And that's the last Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. on Zoom. If they wanted to find me, I am also on YouTube at Andrea Trank, where I have a lot of HeartMath. I do little bits of trainings because I took a lot of my school teacher trainings, and I just clipped it and put it on there for anybody who needed it. And one of them is for chronic pain, because that's me. I deal with chronic pain. I'm on Hashimoto's, gut issue. I've got the whole shebang. Really, it's weird where you find me on my website. It's Heaven Lane Creations, because I used to live on Heaven Lane before the hurricane wiped out my home. I used to be a jewelry designer. So really, I like, this is how I started my healing journey, was designing jewelry. I didn't want to change the name of my company. So it's still called Heaven Lane Creations. You could always find me that way as well.
Great, thank you. And Christy, I'm going to give your email address to everybody.
I'm going to take it too.
It's at therapy@yogafit.com.
Yep, it's an easy one.
Therapy@yogafit.com is one of the ways you can find Christy if you have questions about any of YogaFit's educational programs and how they may help you feel better. And Christy, you're on social media, I'm assuming?
I am. My Instagram is as Christy's yoga_inspiration. My Facebook is just Christy Manuel.
Great. I'd like to thank you both so much for being on the show. It was eye-opening and heart-opening. And we would like to thank, other than thanking both of you, we would also like to thank the sponsors of Make America Healthy. Our program sponsor, Previmedica, offers innovative testing for food sensitivities, nutritional deficiencies, methylation, and more. I've taken these tests, and I have to say it was pretty life-changing for me. Foods that I thought I was eating that were healthy actually were inflammatory to my gut. And when I removed these foods from my diet, things like broccoli and arugula, sadly avocados, and agave, there goes the tequila, I started to feel better, less bloating and less GI issues. So the tests are very effective and also have personalized nutrition and weight and body composition coaches. So you can get the answers that you're looking for about your gut. You can do that by calling 855-773-8463. That's 855-773-8463, extension 111. Or you can email hello@previmedica.com, or just visit them online at previmedica.com. You can also enjoy a 15% discount on your tests by using the code YogaFit at checkout. Again, these tests are not expensive and they really work. We'd also like to thank our title sponsor, YogaFit Training Systems Worldwide, the leader in yoga, mind, body, fitness education, offering online trainings, live trainings, conferences, corporate wellness, yoga for healthcare providers, and so much more. Over 250 different programs to choose from, including a great conference coming in Orlando, September 4th through the 8th. You can save 15% at checkout by using the code MAH, like Make America Healthy. That's MAH24. So we hope to see you at the conference. I'll be there. Christy will be there, along with a lot of other skilled professionals. If you enjoyed this show and know someone who needs to hear it, someone who's in chronic pain, or maybe their heart is just out of whack, please share it. And until next time, everyone, stay healthy, stay happy, and namaste. Thank you.